Welcome, Political Science 370, Social Science Research Methods students. Today, we will be going over an article that was selected by Ashley Causey, and it is called Outness Among LGBTQ Social Work Students in North America, the Contribution of Environmental Supports and Perceptions of Comfort. So, if you're interested in getting the article that appeared in Social Work Education, and there it is, Outness Among LGBTQ Social Work Students in North America, the Contribution of Environmental Supports and Perceptions of Comfort. So, Michael.
Yeah.
If you were an LGBTQ social work student, what would be some things that would make you feel more supported and comfortable in your social work program?
If there wasn't like overt stigmatization, I guess.
Right. If there weren't bullies around calling you names, that'd be bad. Yeah. Right? That would not make you feel supported, and that would not make you feel comfortable in that learning environment, right?
Yeah.
Before we get to more, is it important to feel supported and comfortable in a learning environment in order to learn more?
Definitely.
Yeah, so from a pedagogical standpoint, from a learning standpoint, this is an important issue, right? Because we want all students to feel supported and comfortable so that all students can fulfill their potential.
Yeah.
Right? And be, in this situation, become good social workers. Right? So, no overt bullying. That's a good one. Michael, what else would make you feel more supported and comfortable?
I don't know. I'm trying to think.
Especially about coming out.
Proper pronoun use.
Okay, yeah, no, that's become more and more of a concern recently, right? This was published in 2013.
Oh.
So, yeah, pronoun use has become an even more important issue recently. Let's focus on some of the biggies. How about faculty that are out and appear well-adjusted
so you're
and
not
supported?
like the first one or anything.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. How about other students in the program that are out and appear to be comfortable with that?
Yeah, that would help. Yeah.
That'd help. Yeah, exactly. Right? What else would make you feel comfortable coming out? How about if the university had a policy prohibiting LGBTQ discrimination? Would that...
Yeah, if they directly said that.
Yeah, if they directly said it, why not, right? That'd make me feel more comfortable. So that's what they're doing, is they're looking at some of the institutional considerations. They're looking at some of the classroom considerations. They're looking at some of the environment with your interacting with your peers, and those types of things that might affect how comfortable you are coming out, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how in their models, how out you are is the dependent variable, right? Level of outness.
So it's not dichotomous?
No. It's actually measured, and again, this was a study design decision. It's actually measured their level of outness, their level of disclosure. It's measured as let me just get it so I don't mess it up. Student level outness was measured as very out, somewhat out, and not out at all.
Oh.
So it was measured one of three ways. They say the do not know and missing categories were insignificant and therefore omitted for analyses. Now, before we get started, we should let you know a little bit about how the data set was gathered. Basically, they used an internet-based survey, and it was comprised of LGBTQ undergraduate and graduate students from social work programs across North America. So you needed to be LGBTQ in order to be counted in the survey. They weren't looking at the overall.
Okay, so how'd they prove you were LGBTQ?
Right, good point. It could just be some joker taking the survey.
Yeah.
Especially since it was internet based, right?
Yeah.
But they sent these directly to graduate programs and undergraduate programs.
Okay.
And so it's not like people just stumbled across these on the internet, right? They were sending them to people that were already in undergraduate programs, and so they're assuming people are going to be professional about it and not lie about their sexual identity and sexual orientation and those types of things. So that's kind of the first big thing is well, where'd they get the data? So anytime the data is gathered from an internet-based survey, what's the concern?
It'll be inaccurate.
Yeah, it's inaccurate. That is, it's different from data that's gathered another way. Now, again, this was sent to college students in graduate and undergraduate programs in social work. So most of them are probably familiar with the internet. But there still are concerns with the fact that some people may not be as comfortable using the internet as others. Some may not be comfortable answering a survey, especially about their sexual orientation or sexual identification on the internet, even though, of course, their answers were promised to be kept private and that type of thing. Just, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. But we'll assume it's pretty accurate. Ashley accurately pointed out it's interesting that they decided to use, as they put, undergraduate and graduate students from social work programs across North America. They actually used the U.S. and Canada, right? And so I guess that's good to include another country, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the concern, maybe we should have done U.S. first, get a hold of what, affects people's willingness to come out in the U.S. first, and then we'll expand it to other countries. But they start off with U.S. and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you get your dependent variable?
Yeah.
It's the level of outness. So now, especially in this class, we have talked about the assumptions of OLS, how it's kind of your default method of multivariate regression analysis. So your dependent variable is very out, somewhat out, not out. Could you use OLS?
I guess, you can use it just about anything.
Yeah, on almost any level. But is this a normally distributed dependent variable with continuous level data? No, right? You have three discrete choices. So they have chosen to use a different statistical approach, and it's called Pearson's chi-square analysis.
Oh.
Now chi is spelled C-H-I. Sounds like a fraternity, right?
Yeah.
Chi-square. But it's a certain type of statistical approach. And in order to understand how it works first, let's understand how it works before we look at their actual data yet. Okay? Now just to keep the math simple and to illustrate the point, let's say for right now that your sample size was 1,500. You had 1,500 respondents. Just go ahead and let her out. You had 1,500 respondents, and 500 were very out, 500 were somewhat out, and 500 were not out. Just for the sake of example. Got that?
Mm-hmm.
So 500 in each category. Now, say we have a question, how supported you felt with regard to your LGBTQ identity. How supported you felt with regard to their LGBTQ identity. If there were no difference in how supported someone felt, the data might look something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is just to illustrate the point. So look at those cells, Michael.
Yeah.
When determining how out someone is, does it look like level of support makes much of a difference?
No.
No, why not?
It's the same across.
Yeah, it's the same across.
Yeah.
If level of support made a difference, would this cell be much higher than this cell?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, if this is what your data looked like,
Yeah.
Level of support would have no effect on level of outness. Got it?
Yeah.
So these would come back not statistically significant, right? But imagine that your data looked like this.
Oh my.
Yes! Oh my, right? Now, on the bottom one, this one I intentionally made to be statistically significant. So, as you look at that, it's hard for me to do the backwards thing here. As you look at this box right here,
Yeah.
Among those who are very out, do a lot of them feel very supported?
Yes.
Among those who are not out, how supported? How many people answered that they felt very supported?
None.
None. Right?
Mm.
Yeah. So, this is how this Pearson's chi-square analysis looks. Is it basically looks at the differences in the cells, and if the cells look very different, then there's a statistically significant difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between how supported someone feels and how willing and their willingness to come out. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that takes us to their data, which the first kind of the first variable. Well, actually, let's talk about the ones that don't come back statistically significant, right?
Yeah.
And these are kind of interesting. They say results demonstrated no strong association with level of student outness. So that's your dependent variable. So no strong association with level of student outness and these independent variables. You ready? University or school non-discrimination policies. So whether schools had non-discrimination policies or not, didn't make any difference on how out students were. Why do you suppose that is?
How many people even know if their university has non-discrimination policy?
Exactly.
Like, does one follow?
You're right. You know, and what exists on paper is probably less important than what is happening in the classroom, right? And what you see and feel every day.
Yeah.
So while these non-discrimination policies in a normative sense are probably worthwhile, you know, I as an academic would certainly support them. It doesn't appear to have much effect on the level of outness among students. Again, administrators have a tendency to overemphasize how important administrative decisions are. You know, they think, oh, this is going to make all the difference in the world. But actually, it's what happens in classrooms a lot of the time that makes a difference. So, okay, next, size of the institution. Doesn't matter, right? So, you know, whether you're going to a huge institution or a small institution, doesn't really matter on your level of outness. Religious versus non-religious institutional affiliation. That does not matter on level of outness. Yeah, that one's kind of a surprising thing. And it... Why do you suppose that is? Yeah, just let it
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm trying to think, it's a little puzzling.
It may be... I don't know. I can think of a couple of things. One is religious institutions are getting more and more tolerant in general of changing sexual orientations and sexual identities, that type of thing. Also, maybe an indication that a lot of the time maybe religion isn't taken all that seriously at a lot of religious schools, you know? I don't know, but whatever the reason, religious versus non-religious institutional affiliation doesn't affect level of outness, which is an interesting finding, I think. And the presence of LGBTQ clubs and spaces does not have an effect on level of outness, right? And that would kind of show institutional support, right? If you had clubs, if you had spaces, specifically designated for the LGBTQ community. But apparently it has no effect on level of outness, whether students come out or not. So, again, everyone always focuses on the statistically significant findings. Sometimes the stuff that comes back not statistically significant is just as important and just as puzzling some of the times. Like, that's interesting. Okay, now, let's see what did have a difference. First, LGBTQ student perception of other students' overall level of comfort with their sexual orientation and or gender identity within the program. So in other words, you're around a bunch of kids who you perceive are really comfortable with their sexual orientation and their gender identity. Right? Okay, so if you were a social work student and you saw a bunch of other kids that were really obviously out and comfortable with that and they weren't getting picked on, and loud and proud. That type of a thing. Yeah. Right? Would you feel more comfortable coming out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and basically that's what they found. Okay, now let's go back out to how this Pearson's chi-square analysis works. Here the data are not as neat and tidy as I gave them to you, because the people that answered very out, somewhat out, and not out is not nice and even, right? So that's why I gave you that example. Let's go to how they answered. Results of the three categories corresponding with levels of student outness regarding sexual orientation and or gender identity included very out, N equaled 442, that was 43% of their sample. Somewhat out, the N equaled 458, that was 45% of their sample. And not out, 112, that was 11% of their sample. So, very roughly, very out and somewhat out are about the same percentage. 43, 44, 45% of the sample, right in there. And then not out is about 11%. That's the lowest category. Make sense? Any questions on that?
Yeah, wouldn't that make sense in a way? Because if you're not out, then wouldn't you be less comfortable taking a survey asking you your sexual orientation?
Right. Yeah. Good point. So there may be a response bias.
Yeah.
And those who are not out yet, like, I'm not answering this thing.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm in the computer lab and someone could look over my shoulder and maybe figure out that I'm, so that's a good point. Okay, so now this is how this chi-square analysis works. The dependent variable there, very out, somewhat out, not out. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that basically is your dependent variable, right?
Okay.
So then they look at, in the first one, as I said, level of outness related to other students' overall level of comfort. We'll just do this first one to show you how it works. So, very comfortable. Somewhat comfortable. Not comfortable, right? So, do you see how the more out you are, the more you perceive that students are very comfortable?
Yeah.
228 of the out students said that they perceived other students were very comfortable with their outness. 195 perceived that students were somewhat comfortable, and 11 not perceived that students were not comfortable. Whereas go down to the bottom, not out, only 26 answered that they perceived students were very comfortable with their level of outness. 21 answered that they were somewhat comfortable, and only 9 answered that students were not comfortable. So as you look at that, the more students are out, as their level of outness increase, Are they more likely to answer that students, or are they more likely to perceive that students are very comfortable with being out? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, the table is a little harder to read because the percentage of students that are very out, somewhat out, and not out is not the same to begin with.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to like follow the percentages.
Yeah, no, see, actually what that is that adds up to about 100% depending on rounding within each column. So you see, out of those that answered very comfortable, 56% of those that answered very comfortable were very out, 37% that answered were somewhat out, and 6% that answered were not out. Whereas very out was about, remember, it was about 43% of your sample. Somewhat out was like 45, and not out was like 11% of your sample. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, these are tougher to read because the percentage that answer very out, somewhat out, and not out is not equal to start with, right? So reading the cells can get a little confusing, but the whole thing is, this cell, very comfortable, very out, is different from very comfortable, not out. Is it lower or higher than not out? Is very out lower or higher than not out?
Oh yeah, very out's definitely higher than not out.
Yeah, exactly. So good. Make sense how to read that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's how you read the tables. And again, I really don't like this type of statistical approach, so I'm not going to show you the other ones, but they're basically very similar. They were, so the first one, significant associations were found among the following 6 categories. And remember, your level of outness is the dependent variable in each one of these chi-square analyses, Pearson's chi-square analyses. LGBTQ student perception of other students' overall level of comfort with their sexual orientation and or gender identity within the program. That's the one we just looked at. We're not going to look at these because I don't want to hold them up and have you look at each cell again. But the logic is the same. How many faculty know about their sexual orientation and or gender identity? So the more faculty that know about your sexual orientation and gender identity, what happens to your level of outness? Increases. How many students know about their sexual orientation and or gender identity? That increases the level of outness. How supported they felt with regard to their LGBTQ identity within the program. Percent of faculty that are supported of LGB and Q issues. Not T, I don't know why. That wasn't asked, but so again, I'll repeat that one. Percent of faculty that are supportive of LGB and Q issues, and awareness of openly LGBTQ administrators or staff members. And they say in each of the 6 aforementioned categories, there was a statistically significant correlation, p-value of less than 0.001, between a student's level of outness and the corresponding independent variable. Okay, so different approach from OLS, but it's similar in ways. You have a dependent variable, and you're looking for its relationship to a number of independent variables. What do you think is one of the advantages of this design? Let's just give it a fair shake for a minute. This design right here. Advantages over OLS.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. It's really hard to read, and it just...
Yeah, and it's just a lot of percentages, and you're just like, okay. It almost gets overwhelming, right?
Yeah, I just want to know what affects what.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll show you guys what it looks like. I mean, they look, and there's all these different cells. If I had to, I would say one of the advantages is the data is almost descriptive in orientation, right? You just look, okay, on this question, how many specific students answered this, right? So I guess that's an advantage. Disadvantages, at the end of the day, this is a bivariate analysis, right? Ordinary least squares is multivariate regression analysis. And so you can control for more than one factor at a time, right?
Wait, so that's just bivariate?
Yeah.
So there could be spurious relationships everywhere then, and you can't do anything about it then with that? Or...
Yeah.
Well, that's awful.
Well... it's pick your poison, right?
Why in the world would you use that?
There are advantages and disadvantages to every research design. This is why we're discussing this class. This is, say, utilizing Pearson's chi-square analysis, significant associations correlated between outness and the following 6 areas. And, we talked about Pearson's R. That's for bivariate analysis, right? But it's for continuous level data. This is Pearson's chi-square analysis, and it is for data that is more ordinal, like this. So to discuss another concept, out, somewhat out, very out, is that nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio level data?
Ordinal.
Ordinal, yeah. Very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, not comfortable. Is that nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio level data?
Ordinal.
Ordinal again. Yes, they have ordinal level data. So, they decide to use this approach.
I think it would just make more sense to treat it as what you call it, ratio, and just use OLS.
Continuous level data?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I tell you, OLS is amazingly robust. It yields amazingly accurate coefficient estimates even when the data is less than perfect. And that allows you to use a multivariate approach to enter more than one variable at a time. This is, when you can see, they do it a number of times. Table 2, Table 3, Table 4, Table 5, Table 6, they have, all these different tables, and there's a table 7 in here? I get lost with all these tables because they're going one variable at a time and exploring its relationship to the dependent variable, right? So, it doesn't allow you to hold other variables constant and explore the independent effect of one of these questions on the dependent variable. So why do you suppose they use this research design?
I honestly can't say.
I don't know. Like I said, I think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, if you want to take the time, if this is an issue that's really important to you, then the nice thing about this approach is you can look at each individual question and see how it's related to level of outness. Right?
So just be clear, if they were using this for like the size of the fire and the fireman one, then
you'd have problems.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, then Michael and the class, I'm going to, since this is social science research methods and we are social scientists, I'll point something out that's I'm sure nothing new to those who are concerned with social work education, but for the average student, you may not have thought a lot about it. They get their sample back, and where'd it go? Oh, here it is. They get their sample back. It's as far as gender goes, 72.5% answer female, 21.3% answer male, 4.8 answer no gender category, 2.9 trans man, 2.5 other transgender, and 0.8 trans woman. Okay, so Michael, hate to put you on the spot here,
Okay.
but about what percentage of the population is male?
50?
Right around, right around. Females are actually a little more than 50% of the population, right? They live longer, engage in less risk-taking behavior, then have less prostate cancer, so, all right off the top of your head, men are about 50% of the population.
Yeah.
What percent of social workers are men?
Not 50.
Not 50%. Is it definitely far lower?
Yeah.
Yes. So, research like this, I think, makes a very valid contribution. I'm not denigrating this research in any way, but it's kind of like you have another huge problem staring you in the face, and it's a huge problem, which is why are so many women attracted to your discipline and not men? And it's not like it's a concern just in social work. It's a concern in like elementary education, other professions. Why are men so underrepresented in certain fields?
Okay, I got it. Right.
And so again, so I like this work. I think it's good. It makes a valid contribution. I think it'd be valuable if social work programs could also try to achieve gender or sexual equality, roughly similar. That'd be a worthwhile goal. And I'm sure they've explored it. And again, it's not necessarily my field. But any other questions?
No.
No? Okay. Well, thanks a lot, students, and we will see you later. Have a great day.